A 10-year-old girl suddenly went mute after returning from her grandmother's house. No words, no complaints, only muffled crying at night and a chilling, bone-deep silence. Her mother began to suspect something had happened, quietly installed a camera in the house. And from there, a terrifying truth slowly began to surface. Mum, I don't want him near the kitchen table ever again. The school bell had just rung when the classroom door burst open and groups of students spilled out like water breaking through a dam. Rubber shoes slapped against the concrete, laughter rippled across the yard. Amidst the noise, a little brown-haired girl with a low ponytail walked quietly across the schoolyard, pressing close to the weathered wooden fence. That was Lily Monroe, 10 years old, the only daughter of a single mother. She didn't run, didn't talk, just walked straight ahead as if trying to avoid every glance. Her left hand always clutched the strap of her backpack tightly, while her right hand fidgeted with the hem of her jacket. It was a repetitive motion, both automatic and uneasy. From the classroom doorway, Miss Haley Grant, Year 5's homeroom teacher and also the literature teacher, watched her student in silence. Haley was in her early 30s, lightly curled hair, round glasses, always observant and deeply committed. She was often the first to notice subtle changes in her students. She'd taught many children, but few had troubled her as much as Lily did now. "She's been acting differently, Miss Ashley," Haley said, as Ashley Monroe, Lily's mother, arrived to pick her up. Ashley was in her early 30s too, pale-skinned, dark brown hair tied neatly back. She used to work as a legal assistant, but after having Lily, she shifted to freelance work to spend more time with her daughter. She was strong, independent, and extremely sensitive to every shift in her child. "Hello, Miss Haley." Ashley nodded, her eyes flicking quickly to her daughter. "Is Lily okay?" Haley shook her head slightly. She didn't say a word in class. I asked them to write a paragraph about emotions yesterday. She closed her notebook, didn't write a single word. Lily stood there, head down, silent. Her hand tightened around the backpack strap, creasing the fabric. On the drive home, Ashley adjusted the rear-view mirror. Through it, she saw Lily staring blankly out the window. The houses blurred past, autumn sliding quietly by street lamps and rows of trees. Ashley recalled the first time Lily learned to ride a bike in the park, how the girls' laughter lit up her red cheeks. Now, that warmth, that innocent spark, was gone from her eyes. Ashley cleared her throat. "You're not happy? Did something happen at school?" Lily shook her head, not looking at her mother. "Or did something make you uncomfortable at Grandma's?" Lily shut her eyes, then gently shook her head. That night, after tucking Lily into bed, Ashley sat alone in the living room. She replayed old videos on her phone, one where Lily danced to a song on TV, another of them baking together. Each moment was full of laughter, light, and life. The most recent clip showed Lily sitting in a corner of the room, the TV screen's glow on her face, but her eyes weren't smiling. Upstairs, a soft creak from the bed. Ashley climbed the stairs quietly. Lily's door was slightly ajar. The girl was under the covers, only her small feet sticking out. A soft sound came from the window, the wind whistling through the hinges. Lily flinched, curling up like a frightened kitten. Ashley stood there, eyes brimming with tears. That weekend, as usual, Ashley took Lily to visit Evelyn Harper, Ashley's mother, Lily's grandmother. Evelyn was in her 80s, living alone in an old house on the outskirts. She was a woman of few words, fond of knitting and afternoon tea. A former librarian, she lived by rules and routines, but often kept to herself. "Hi, Mum," Ashley greeted as Evelyn opened the door. Lily stood behind her mother, saying nothing. Evelyn's eyes flicked to Lily, quick, unreadable. Lily instinctively stepped closer to her mother, as if seeking shelter without even knowing it. Ashley sensed something cracking under the calm surface. "She hasn't been eating much lately," Ashley said, while helping Evelyn tidy up the kitchen. "Did you notice anything?" "She's probably just tired," Evelyn replied, drying dishes. "Kids grow fast, change unpredictably." Lily sat at the table, facing the window. Evelyn ladled soup. Ashley passed the bread. The air at the table was heavy, as if each person sat in a separate space. Evelyn spoke about the neighbors, about a tree in the yard losing leaves to insects. No one responded. Only the clink of spoons on porcelain and the steady ticking of the grandfather clock filled the silence. "Lily, aren't you going to eat?" Evelyn asked, her voice softer than usual. "I'm not hungry," the girl answered, not lifting her head. When Ashley was about to leave, she hugged her daughter tightly. Lily stayed still in her arms, then walked into the house without looking back. Evelyn stood on the porch, arms crossed. Ashley sat in the car for a moment before starting the engine. In the rearview mirror, she saw her daughter's small figure disappearing into the old house, swallowed by the doorway. Never had the distance between 3 generations felt so stark, and in that vague, flickering moment, Ashley realized it wasn't Lily who was changing. It was something behind that door. At the coffee shop, tucked away at the end of the street, the candlelight on the walls faded with the morning hours. Inside, a round wooden table, worn by time, held 2 steaming lattes. Outside, maple leaves drifted aimlessly around the bare metal chairs and tables. "It's strange," Ashley exhaled softly, eyes fixed on her coffee. My cat jumped into her lap, and she didn't stroke its head. Didn't push it away either. Just sat there looking like she wasn't really there. Shannon Moore, Ashley's closest friend, set down her cup and tilted her head. A divorced mother of 2, she was used to the kind of quiet that children sometimes carry with them. "Lily's the kind of child who retreats when her emotions get bottled up," Shannon said, her voice slower now. "When Sammy was little, every time someone mentioned her dad, she'd crawl into the wardrobe and lock the door from the inside. We can't force them to talk before they're ready, but we can give them a sense of safety, so they'll slowly open up. The key is not to rush." Ashley nodded, suddenly feeling a chill run through her body. That afternoon, after noticing that Lily still wasn't reacting to familiar things, and even seemed to avoid her mother's gaze, Ashley decided to take her daughter to the pediatric clinic downtown. She needed someone with the experience to recognize what she, as a mother, didn't dare consider. Dr. Anil Patel was well trusted by many local parents. Beyond his degree from Johns Hopkins, he had over 30 years of experience working with children showing signs of depression or behavioral disorders. He never pushed, never jumped to conclusions. He listened with his eyes as much as with his ears. His warm demeanor and deep, calm voice made children feel safe. "I remember Lily being responsive during our last visit," Dr. Patel said as he glanced through the file, his eyes lingering briefly on the section about recent behaviors. "Now she's quieter, less reactive. It could be an early response to a mild form of trauma. I think we should monitor her for a few more days rather than rush to label anything." Ashley sat up straight and crossed her arms. She hesitated, then spoke up. "Lately, the changes only happen after she comes back from her grandmother's house. There were no signs before that." She paused. "Do you think it might be because of her?" Patel shook his head. "I don't want to speculate, but when children change or are affected by family dynamics, they often go quiet before they can put it into words, especially children with high cognitive sensitivity, like Lily." The next morning, Ashley stopped at the same intersection as usual, just before the light turned green. The clock on the dashboard read 7:38, but Lily sat still. No headphones, no fiddling with her charm bracelet, just staring blankly through the car window. "Want me to put on some music?" Ashley offered. Lily didn't reply. "How about Ellie Goulding, like the other day? You love the beginning of that song." The girl gave a slight shrug, her gaze still fixed on the glass. It wasn't apathy. It was as if, in that moment, even answering her mother was too much to bear. It wasn't a no, not a yes. Just a kind of silence, meant to protect something inside, something even she couldn't fully understand. Later, at home, Ashley sat in front of her computer, clicking through old files. She found a birthday video from last year. In the clip, Lily was bursting soap bubbles, head thrown back in laughter, running circles around the party table. Her laughter was pure, high, sharp, echoing through the living room. Now, Lily was silent. Her eyes no longer lit up at birthday cake or the sound of friends singing. That evening, Ashley video-called Nora, a former colleague from her legal days, now working for a private security firm. "Something's not right, Nora," Ashley said, her voice low and unsure. "Lily only changes after visiting her grandmother. It's not just moodiness. She's not angry or acting out. It's like she's shutting down, like she's hiding something that scares her." Nora furrowed her brow. "You thinking of installing cameras? Aren't you worried Evelyn might notice?" "No, I'll do it myself. I'll hide one in a photo frame, another in the kitchen, one in the living room. She won't know if I pick the right spots." "You sure?" Ashley gave a slight nod, eyes turning away. Then she fell into a long silence. "I don't have room for doubt anymore," she finally said quietly, as if even she couldn't believe she'd just said it. Outside, the streetlights blinked softly in the night. In darkness, decisions rarely feel neat. But Ashley had crossed the line of suspicion. For the first time, she agreed to place a second pair of eyes inside the very house she thought she could trust completely. Morning on the outskirts was cool and crisp. The early sticky rice vendor had already begun sending up faint curls of steam. Mr. George's grocery store door was still slightly ajar, with only a lonely green LED light seeping through. In Mrs. Evelyn's housing block, the world remained still and hushed. Ashley walked in, carrying a small brown bag. Inside were 3 mini cameras, wireless, the latest models. Carl Beck, a 29-year-old technician, tall and slender with a gentle voice, was kneeling to check the lighting in the house. "This side of the kitchen's too bright, could cause glare on the camera, and that ceiling corner is out of view, not very effective." Ashley nodded lightly, polite, but not too familiar. She quietly placed the cameras in their designated spots, in the jewelry basket, the corner by the bookshelf, and inside Lily's photo frame, each becoming a strategic spot for the second eye to observe the house. "No one will suspect anything unless they reset the modem," Carl said as he installed the second camera behind the spice rack, hidden behind the row of dishes. "But the old lady probably has no clue about any of this." Ashley smiled, her voice softening slightly. "My mum still uses a flip phone, Carl. I don't think she'll notice." Evelyn stepped out from her room. She wore a small knitted apron, still holding her needle, looking surprised to see Carl. "Who's that?" "A friend of mine, Mum, a technician. He's here to help me fix the desk clock. Maybe just changing the battery or adjusting something." Ashley answered, standing next to her granddaughter's photo frame. She tried to appear casual, but her gaze instinctively turned away when Evelyn looked directly at her. "Is Lily coming soon?" "Around noon, Mum. I'll still pick her up in 3 days." Evelyn nodded, then walked to the window. Since her husband passed, she stood there every morning, hand resting lightly on the cold glass, eyes gazing far off to somewhere no one else could reach. Carl emerged from the living room and gave Ashley a wink. Done. Whenever the cameras detect movement, they'll start recording automatically. Each clip won't last more than 5 minutes. Ashley nodded. She slowly walked around the house, her eyes lingering on each camera spot. All were hidden behind familiar objects tied to memories. A family photo frame, the dish rack with the worn handle, and beneath the table lamp, casting its soft yellow glow. When Lily arrived, Ashley went out to meet her at the car. The little girl wore a cream coat, clutching a small stuffed bunny in her arms. Her eyes were red and sunken, as if from a sleepless night, though no tears had fallen. "I came later than last time," Ashley said as her daughter turned her face away. Lily didn't reply. She entered the house with small, hesitant steps. Evelyn stood by the doorway, watching the mother and daughter in solemn silence. "Why do you look so tired?" "Maybe she didn't sleep well last night." Evelyn hesitated, then nodded, as if unsure of her own thoughts. Lily followed her mother, but as soon as she reached the threshold, she drew back slightly, her eyes darting quickly around the familiar room, now making her uneasy. Ashley noticed. Her heart tightened. Not from that one moment, but from the repetition of it. She had seen that look several times, the way Lily's eyes would pause on certain spots in the living room, then flick away as if afraid of being caught. Ashley gently squeezed Lily's hand, as if to say she was there. But inside, she had started piecing together the fragments. The way Lily avoided Evelyn's gaze, how she flinched at the sound of a door opening, or how she spent whole nights sleeping face down in silence. Something was not right. Nighttime. The pale light from the laptop screen casts a ghostly glow on Ashley's tense face. In the small room, only the ticking of the wall clock and the sound of her heartbeat, quicker than usual, break the silence. On the screen, footage from security cameras shows various corners of Mrs. Evelyn's house where Lily is staying alone with her. Ashley hasn't slept for 3 nights in a row. She rewinds, fast-forwards, slows down, and zooms in on every single frame. There's no sound, no clear movements, only the stillness of the house. Sometimes, a shadow of Mrs. Evelyn quietly passing the kitchen. Other times, Lily, sitting at the edge of the bed, clutching her stuffed bunny, her eyes staring into nothingness. The little girl doesn't cry, but the expression on her face tightens Ashley's throat. A child who used to be lively, always running around, now reduced to a shell of herself, and all Ashley can do is sit helplessly on the other side of a screen. Then one frame makes Ashley freeze. 1:46 a.m., kitchen camera, a figure, tall, wearing a black coat, head bowed low. He walks down the hallway like someone who knows the house well. No hesitation, no looking around. He passes through the kitchen and disappears into a blind spot, the part the camera doesn't cover. Ashley gasps. She rewinds. Again. This time, she pauses exactly when Lily appears in the corner of the kitchen. The girl is trembling, clutching the bunny so tightly her fingers are curled in. No screaming, just silence, filled with fear. In another frame, Ashley notices something she missed before. Lily glances up at the camera for a brief second, almost as if pleading. Just a few seconds. Then she drops her gaze again. Ashley buries her face in her hands. The guilt is crushing. The next morning, Ashley takes a printed frame from the footage and goes to Mr. George's grocery store, the man who lives right at the entrance to Evelyn's alley. The shop still has old notices pinned to the walls. The scent of coffee mixes with the familiar smell of newspaper. George, in his 60s, salt and pepper hair, tucked-in shirt, glasses slipping down his nose, is arranging a tray of bread. "George," Ashley calls softly, but urgently. He looks up and nods. "What's the matter, dear? You don't look well. Have you seen any strangers going into my mom's alley these past few nights? Around midnight or just before dawn. Tall, wearing black, alone. George frowns, thinks for a while. Yes, twice this week, someone like that. I didn't go out to ask, but I remember his build clearly. Walks fast, head down, but familiar. Looks like that Ronald Adams guy. Ashley goes pale. Are you sure? Ronald, he used to work at the post office, right? Yeah, there were rumors back then, lingering near places with kids, but no one ever caught him in the act. Then he quit, disappeared. I thought he'd moved away. Ashley thanks him, gripping the printed image with a hand gone cold. At noon, Ashley returns home, uneasy. She picks up her phone, meaning to call Nora, her best friend, always ready to listen, but puts it back down. The question keeps echoing in her mind. Am I overreacting, or is something truly terrifying happening? Instead of calling, she opens her laptop, scrolls to the part where Lily is curled up in the kitchen corner, clutching the bunny. The girl's eyes, blank, unresponsive, hit Ashley like a punch to the chest. She steps back slightly, rewinds, and replays the same scene. There's no doubt now. That expression isn't just tiredness, it's fear. Compressed, suffocating fear. And she, a mother, had to rely on surveillance footage to realize it. Ashley clips a short segment and sends it to Dr. Patel, the kind-hearted Indian psychologist with a voice soft as wind, who once advised her to let Lily stay with relatives to regain a sense of safety. With the video, Ashley writes only one line. Is this a sign of panic? The reply comes within minutes. I believe so. If it were me, I would act immediately. Don't wait. Ashley reads the message, but her eyes stay fixed on the phone screen. In her head, the words echo into every corner of her mind. Act immediately. Simple words, but they hit her like a jolt. Suddenly, she realizes she's been afraid, not just for Lily, but of herself. Afraid because she's doubted too long. Let politeness, trust, and hesitation smother her instincts as a mother. She puts the phone down on the table, glancing around her silent room. Outside, tree branches tap lightly against the window. Inside, everything is so quiet it feels sinister. In that silence, she can hear her own heart pounding. Part of her wants to run straight to Evelyn's house, grab her daughter, and leave. But another part, rational and cold, knows that without strong enough proof, everything could be denied. And that man, he's still out there. Ashley stares at the message again, her heart dropping into a bottomless pit. The fear is no longer vague. It has a name, a face, and it's dangerously close. The message comes again. Possibly. If it were me, I would act immediately. Don't wait. Ashley grips the phone. Her heart sinks completely. That night, Ashley sits once again before the screen. She sets the laptop on the kitchen table, carefully tracking timestamps, camera angles, and even the frames where nothing moves, because sometimes it's the silence that signals something is wrong. Lily is still at Evelyn's house. Ashley doesn't want to startle the girl by suddenly pulling her away, but every passing hour feels like a stab to her chest. She doesn't know whether to be more worried for her child or angry at herself for being so late. Then, the kitchen light flashes on screen. A shadow appears, clearer this time. He stands by the wall, hand on the doorknob, then quietly steps into the camera's blind spot. Ashley zooms in, trembling. Part of his face catches the light. High-bridged nose, a faint scar near his temple. She knows that face. No mistake. Ronald Adams. Ashley snaps the laptop shut. Her heart pounds. No more doubts. She has to act. Right now. Before going to bed, She turns the laptop on one more time. A new clip has been recorded. Lily stands in the hallway, surrounded by darkness. The lights are off. She turns her head toward the kitchen. Then slowly, she raises her hand and makes a sign. Unclear, but repeated twice. Ashley covers her mouth, heart thundering in her chest. It's the sign she and Lily used back when the girl was in preschool, a signal asking her mum to come help. Lily is asking for help. The quiet morning was interrupted by the urgent sound of the doorbell. Evelyn, in a thick ash-grey wool robe, stepped out to answer it. Her face darkened slightly when she saw Ashley standing there, not smiling like she usually did. Ashley's hand gripped the strap of her bag tightly, her eyes betraying undeniable tension. "We need to talk," Ashley said, her voice low but firm. Evelyn invited her daughter in, her eyes briefly hesitant. They sat in the living room, surrounded by old family photos and muted sunlight filtering through the curtains. Ashley opened her laptop and placed it on the table. She said nothing, just clicked play on a video. On screen, a shadowy figure appeared clearly in the kitchen. Evelyn's face slowly changed. She examined every detail, her lips pressed together, then released a wordless sigh. "Who is that?" Ashley asked. No accusation, no anger, just a question demanding the truth. Evelyn lowered her head. "Ashley, I don't know. Maybe a drifter." Ashley quietly paused the video, looked up at her mother. "Don't do that. I've already sent this to Dr. Patel. I know who that is too." Evelyn froze. She leaned back slightly, eyes filling with tears. I'm sorry. I didn't think he would go near Lily. I thought everything would be fine if I just went along with it." A sharp ache passed through Ashley's chest. "Who is he, Mum? Why would you let him come in and out of the house?" Evelyn sat still for a few seconds, then spoke hoarsely. "Martha, she knows about something from my past, from the war. A mistake. I did something I'm ashamed of, and she threatened to reveal it if I didn't help. I was scared. I didn't want a buried secret to destroy a lifetime of respectability." She paused, then continued in a quieter voice. "She introduced Ronald, said he was in trouble and just needed somewhere to sleep at night. Martha said it was a simple way for me to make amends. Quietly. I thought letting him sleep in the basement, with no one knowing, wouldn't hurt anyone. I never imagined he'd take an interest in Lily or wander the house like he owned it." Ashley said nothing, but inside, a slow, simmering anger flared like embers being stirred. She clenched her fists, fingernails nearly digging into her palms. The mother who had always been her rock, the one she'd trusted without question, now stood before her as a stranger, weak and blind to danger. Her eyes on Evelyn no longer held just disappointment, but a tightly coiled fury she didn't know whether to unleash or swallow. A part of her wanted to scream, to demand answers, to blame. But another part, still the daughter, could only sit in silence, her heart twisting. The door opened. Sandy entered, Evelyn's eldest daughter, Ashley's sister. She froze at the sight of the two women facing each other, the air thick with tension. "What's going on?" Ashley stood, her eyes red, her voice breaking from holding back too long. "You came back just in time. I can't stay silent anymore. Mum let someone like Ronald sneak into the house at night while Lily was still here." Her voice cracked, but she didn't shout. The fury had settled into a trembling weight behind every word. Evelyn, across from her, didn't dare look up. Her shoulders hunched, hands shaking as if trying to hide, but finding nowhere to hide them. Ashley looked at her mother, waiting for something, a confession, a reckoning. But all she saw was a worn face, dazed, eyes avoiding hers. "You let him come and go freely. You left Lily in the same house with him and didn't say a word to me." Sandy turned to Evelyn, eyes wide in disbelief. "Mum, is that true? You let someone like him into the house while Lily was still here?" Sandy stepped back, her whole body rigid. "I don't understand. What were you thinking?" Evelyn buried her face in her hands. "I was wrong. I thought if I stayed quiet, everything would just go away." That afternoon, after seeing Lily and Ashley off, Evelyn sat silently by the window, her heart heavy with all that had just unfolded. The late daylight filtered through the old glass, casting a thin layer of dust-like time over her face. An emptiness, a deep ache spread through her chest like a hollow just carved out. Unable to bear the silence, Evelyn put on her old cardigan and stepped outside, slowly making her way to the small convent at the end of the street, the one with the rose garden she used to visit on days she needed quiet. The sky was grey, early winter wind threading through her silver hair. She passed the rusty iron gate and entered the convent grounds as if searching for shelter for a soul in disarray. The chapel bell echoed gently in the still air. Evelyn walked along the cold stone corridor, brushing her hand lightly against the wall as if to steady herself. She stopped at a familiar wooden door and knocked 3 times. The door opened and Sister Joan, the elderly nun of the convent, an old friend, appeared with kind eyes. "Evelyn," she said, her voice calm and warm. "I heard. I knew you'd come." Evelyn stepped in and sat on the wooden bench, hands clasped, eyes vacant. "I don't know who I am anymore, Joan. I've lived my whole life quietly, trying to protect the image, to atone. But in the end, it was that silence that hurt the ones I love the most." Sister Joan placed a hand over hers. "Honor isn't in hiding the past, Evelyn. It's in having the courage to face it, no matter how much it hurts. And if there's anything the old should pass down to the young, it's not perfection. It's the bravery to make things right." Evelyn closed her eyes, a single tear trailing down her wrinkled cheek. She didn't speak, just gave a slight nod. In that moment, surrounded by cold stone walls and distant bells, something within her lightened. Not forgiveness, but the beginning of facing the truth. Something had begun to shift inside her, gently, but undeniably. Early in the morning, Marcus, Ashley's quiet and meticulous brother-in-law, sat in front of his personal computer in the study. The night before, after hearing his wife Sandy recount the entire story, what Evelyn had confessed and the footage Ashley had recorded, Marcus decided to help. A seasoned technician by trade, he began tracing the clip with intense focus. He zoomed in on the frame. The man's build, the way he walked, the angle of his face, all left behind some strangely familiar trace in his memory. Marcus typed quickly, logging into the old database of the local civilian investigation office, a place he had once worked with years ago. A name flashed up from the data. Ronald Deeks. Marcus frowned. The man had been investigated 4 years ago for suspicious behavior involving children in the East Side neighborhood, but no solid evidence had been found. The case was closed. But that alone made Marcus wary. Remembering Sandy's frightened face as she spoke, and Ashley's barely concealed anxiety, he knew he couldn't stay on the sidelines. He immediately printed out the file, clipped it into a folder, and drove straight to Ashley's house, his heart heavy with the sense that this was bigger than they had imagined. Marcus arrived at Ashley's that same morning and handed her the printed file. They sat at the kitchen table, the early sunlight casting a long beam across the surface. Ashley skimmed through it, her face paling. They didn't need many words. Both knew exactly what had to be done next. Shortly after, they went to the local police station. Ryan, a middle-aged officer and an old acquaintance of Evelyn's family, was the first to receive them. Marcus laid the printout on Ryan's desk and pointed to the portrait in the top right corner. The moment Ryan saw Ronald's photo, his expression flickered. "I know him. We detained Ronald once for loitering near an elementary school playground back in 2019. But he denied everything. No witnesses. We had to let him go. He disappeared after that." Ashley clenched her hands, her gaze sharpening, each word delivered like a declaration. "This time, it's not just hearsay. I have video, clear, undeniable. And more than that, I have my daughter, a child who trembled inside what was supposed to be her safest place." She looked Ryan straight in the eye, her voice steady, though her eyes brimmed with tears. "I won't let this be ignored again. No matter how many times he runs, this time, we will make him answer for it." Ryan nodded, his expression now more resolute. "I'll reopen the file, but we'll need more information. He has no fixed address." After leaving the station, Ashley still felt there were too many missing pieces. Ronald had been seen around Evelyn's house, but to press charges, she needed more than just one video. Sitting in the car, recalling his face from the footage, the beanie pulled low, the cautious steps, she suddenly remembered Lisa, her best friend from university. Lisa now worked at the Regional Security Monitoring Center and had helped her a few times before with retrieving camera footage. Without hesitation, Ashley called Lisa as soon as she left the parking lot. Lisa, always gentle but sharply perceptive, picked up after a short ring. "Ash? What's wrong? You sound off." Ashley spoke quickly. "I need you to check from the 19th to the 25th of last month. Cameras around Evelyn's neighborhood. I suspect someone's been lurking around there repeatedly." Lisa replied succinctly, asking no further questions. "Send me the time frame. I'll start scanning. If he's been hanging around, he'll have left traces." A few hours later, Lisa sent back a clip. A man in a black coat and beanie appeared multiple times near the narrow alley behind Evelyn's house. He never knocked, just stood there watching, his eyes fixed on the kitchen window. Reggie, the young neighbor who often helped Evelyn with odd jobs, dropped by to return a lamp with a new bulb. When asked, he remembered something. "There were a few days when I saw a strange man coming out the back gate of her house. I thought he was family, but he always kept his head down and never greeted anyone. Strange thing is, I once saw him standing in the garden, staring at Lily through the glass for a long time. It felt off, but I didn't dare say anything. Letty, the landlady of a boarding house on the edge of town, called the police after seeing Ronald's photo on the internal bulletin. She remembered him because he had rented a room for 3 weeks before suddenly disappearing, leaving behind an old backpack with some identification papers. I didn't know his real name then. He registered under a fake one. But that picture, that's him. Room 3C, last row. I still have the rental slip." That night, in a silent room, Evelyn sat by a wooden desk, the soft yellow lamplight falling onto a blank sheet of paper. The air around her felt thick with tangled thoughts, guilt, regret, and a loneliness too deep to name. She stared at the page for several minutes, her hands clasped as though in silent prayer. Her chest felt heavy, her breathing uneven. She picked up the pen, but didn't write right away. Her hands were trembling, not just from age, but from the truth that was pushing to be released, a truth that terrified her. She feared being hated, being forgotten, losing Lily forever. After a long pause, Evelyn took a deep breath and lowered the pen to the paper. Each word appeared slowly, haltingly, like the shape of her broken spirit. "My dearest Lily, I no longer deserve to be called your grandmother. But if you still have any shred of trust or love for me, please read these lines. The letter held no excuses. Only truth, remorse, and one humble wish: to be forgiven, or at least to be understood, that she never meant harm. The night wind slipped through the window cracks. Evelyn folded the letter, sealed the envelope, and held it tight to her chest, as if clinging to the last piece of herself still left. The small room at the Adolescent Counseling Center was painted a pale beige, with a few drawings by the children themselves hanging on the walls. A glass window looked out onto the backyard, where a sandbox and a swing swayed gently in the spring breeze. Clara Bowman, a child therapist, sat by a low table facing Lily. On the table lay some colored pencils, drawing paper, and a stuffed bear with its head tilted to one side. Clara was a middle-aged woman with neatly cropped brown hair and a soft, even voice, like a gentle breeze. Ashley sat on a chair behind them, quietly observing. It was her first time bringing Lily here. She felt like a mother with one broken wing. Worried, guilty. Clara had reassured her not by pressing for answers or forcing Lily to speak, but simply by inviting the girl to draw, color, play with the stuffed bear, and from there, little by little, began unlocking the tightly shut door within the child. "What do you see in this picture?" Clara asked, holding up the sheet Lily had just finished, a drawing of a long table with 2 chairs and a stuffed bear curled up on one side. Lily looked down and touched a dark stroke on the paper. For a moment, her face tensed. "I don't want anyone near this table," Lily said softly, but clearly enough for Ashley to hear from behind. Ashley felt her heart clench. She covered her mouth, eyes stinging. Clara's tone remained calm. "Then we'll leave it alone. No one touches it unless you say so." Lily nodded. A few weeks later, a court summons arrived at Ashley's home. Ronald had been formally charged, and to prove the impact he had on the victim, Lily's account, or any expression from her, would be crucial. Ashley sat in the car, reading the letter, heart in turmoil. Part of her wanted to shield her daughter from every gaze, from the witness stand, from the questions that might bring her to tears. But another part mother, part woman, who had walked through pain with her child, knew that silence could not be a refuge forever. That evening, she called Clara. "Do you think Lily can face the court?" Ashley asked, her voice low and hoarse. Clara was silent for a few seconds, then replied, "I can't say for sure, but I do see one thing. She's starting to want to be understood. No pressure, just trust her. I'll help prepare the rest with her." The county court held a closed hearing. Only the judge, attorneys, family members, and investigators were present. Judge Bryce, known for his calm demeanor and prioritizing child safety, sat high on the bench, reading the file through his silver-rimmed glasses. "This case involves a minor," he said, "so every piece of evidence must be thoroughly examined." Marcus submitted the extracted video footage. Lisa provided logs from nearby security cameras. Reggie and Letty signed witness statements. Piece by piece, the truth Evelyn had once tried to bury came together. "What about Lily?" the prosecutor asked. Ashley stood up. "My daughter won't take the stand in the traditional way, but there's a video recorded in the therapy room. Clara was present, and I was there. The child chose to draw and speak on her own." Judge Bryce nodded. "Play it." On the screen, Lily appeared, sitting across from Clara, holding a purple crayon. She pointed at the kitchen table in her drawing, clutching her small stuffed bear. "I don't want him near the kitchen table," Lily said, eyes fixed on the page. In the courtroom, no one spoke. Ashley bit her lip until it bled. Marcus placed a hand on her shoulder, light as breath. Judge Bryce nodded, a flicker of emotion passing behind his glasses. He asked no further questions. He didn't need to. As they left the court, Lily still held her stuffed bear. Clara walked beside her, occasionally nodding gently in encouragement. Ashley held her daughter's hand, saying nothing, because everything that needed to be said, the girl had already said. At the car, Lily suddenly asked, "Mom, do I have to go back there again?" Ashley knelt to her eye level, brushing Lily's hair aside. "But if one day you want to keep telling your story, I'll be here to listen." A light breeze swept across the courthouse yard, carrying the scent of early blossoms. The cold had begun to ease, and for the first time in a long while, Lily's eyes no longer looked away. The county courtroom was packed. There was no noise, no chaos, but the atmosphere was taut, like a stretched string. Ashley sat beside her lawyer, her eyes fixed on Ronald, the man in a wrinkled shirt, disheveled hair, and eyes cold as ice. Dean, Ronald's defense attorney, rose with a calm yet calculating voice. "Your Honor, my client denies all allegations. We believe the submitted video may have been edited or tampered with, and there is no direct evidence proving any wrongdoing." He turned toward Evelyn, sharply questioning. "Mrs. Evelyn, do you suffer from any neurological disorders or memory issues? Perhaps you misunderstood, or your recollection is no longer reliable." Ashley shot up, her voice filled with anger. "You have no right to insult my mother like that." Judge Bryce tapped his gavel lightly. "Order. Mr. Dean, please remain appropriate." Dean then turned toward Clara and Lily. "This little girl, it seems everything she says was suggested by an adult. How can a 10-year-old describe things in such detail?" Clara stood up, her voice calm. "I didn't suggest anything to her. What Lily said was expressed through images, drawings, and facial expressions, things that can't be prompted unless they come from genuine feelings and personal experience. We've examined the entire video. There is no sign of editing, splicing, or technical interference. The footage is fully original from the recording device. Additionally, the timestamps match the system log." Judge Bryce nodded. "Noted." The tension in the room eased slightly. Ronald looked visibly uneasy. When his eyes swept over Lily, the girl shrank back, her hands clenched tightly. Clara placed a hand on Lily's shoulder, comforting her. Ronald's gaze remained fixed on the girl, prompting Ashley to suddenly rise as if to shield her. Lily lowered her head, avoided his eyes, then turned away, but didn't leave the room. It was the first time she had ever looked directly at the man who had terrified her, even if just for a moment. Then, Evelyn was called to the stand. The entire room fell silent as she leaned on her cane, slowly making her way forward. The overhead lights cast down upon her silver hair and deeply wrinkled face, as if engraving the weight of the years upon her. "Mrs. Evelyn, please proceed." She lifted her head. Her eyes sought no one but Lily, the little girl seated behind the row, next to Clara. A brief moment of eye contact, then she turned to face forward. I stayed silent. For a long time, I believed that staying quiet would be enough to preserve a shred of dignity in my final years. Years ago, I gave false testimony in an administrative case involving the charity where I volunteered. Martha, a member of the knitting club, found out by chance and used that against me. When Ronald appeared and requested access to my home, I hesitated. He said if I didn't comply, everything I had hidden for years would be exposed. She paused, her voice sinking lower. At the time, I feared ruin. I let that fear guide me. I thought he wouldn't do anything serious. I was wrong, and I let my granddaughter suffer without knowing. I'm not here today to make excuses. I'm here to make amends. Dean interrupted. You admit to disabling the security system at Ronald's unclear request. Evelyn looked at him. I failed to stop it. That's exactly why I'm here. The room seemed to hold its breath in silence. Then Janet and Benny, two former members of the knitting club, were called as witnesses. They had seen Ronald lingering around Evelyn's house on several occasions, but chose to remain silent. Janet lowered her head, her voice trembling. "I was scared. I thought maybe Mrs. Evelyn knew who he was, so I didn't dare interfere." Benny added, "We were wrong. We should have spoken up from the beginning. Ronald had come to the club a few times, asking about things completely unrelated to knitting or charity work. Once I saw him speaking privately with Martha in the back hallway, but when I approached, they both acted as if nothing had happened. I felt uneasy, but thought it must be their personal matter. I never imagined things would go this far." Judge Bryce made no comment. He simply took notes. But from his expression, it was clear these testimonies carried weight. The session was adjourned. Ashley stepped into the hallway, leaning against the wall, hand on her chest. Clara approached, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. "Everything is moving in the right direction," she said. Ashley nodded. Her eyes turned to Lily, who was quietly waiting, no longer avoiding eye contact. That child, at last, had been heard, and justice, though delayed, was on its way. The sound of Judge Bryce's gavel echoed like a verdict crashing through the thick air of the courtroom. "Ronald J. Harlow, you are sentenced to 45 years in prison for charges related to the abuse of a minor and unlawful entry into a private residence. This court is adjourned." No one breathed. It was as if the air itself had thickened, frozen in place. The courtroom held its breath, suspended in a silence so heavy it pressed against the walls. Even the ticking of the clock seemed to falter. Ronald sank into the defendant's chair, his movements slow, almost mechanical. His fingers curled tightly around the edge of the wooden table, knuckles white, veins taut, gripping not just the table, but perhaps the last thread of composure he had left. He said nothing. Not a word escaped his lips. No protest, no denial, not even a whisper of defense. His face remained a mask, rigid, unreadable. The muscles in his jaw barely moved. His eyes, however, gave away a quiet storm, wide but empty, as though staring into something far away or too close to bear. Not a single tear fell. But in that lack of emotion, in that deafening stillness, there was something more unsettling than rage or grief. It was the silence of a man who had nothing left to say, perhaps because too much had already been said, or because what needed to be said was no longer his to speak. Ashley closed her eyes. Her chest felt hollow. Strangely, there was no joy of victory, no satisfaction, only a bone-deep exhaustion. It was finally over, and yet the pain remained intact. Across the room, Mrs. Evelyn, like the last yellow leaf still clinging to a branch, slumped in her seat. Her cane fell to the floor with a soft but piercing thud. Sandy rushed to her mother, helping her up as she trembled, unable to stand. Ashley meant to follow, but paused when her eyes met Lily's gaze. The girl was holding Clara's hand tightly, her eyes no longer avoiding contact. Ashley approached her daughter, knelt down. "Are you okay?" Lily nodded gently, but her eyes still held something unspoken. For a moment, she glanced toward Clara, as if to check if it was truly safe to speak her heart. Then, Lily took a deep breath. "I feel lighter, Mum. But I'm still scared," she said, lowering her gaze, her fingers instinctively clutching the hem of her shirt. Clara gently squeezed Lily's shoulder, while Ashley wrapped her arms around her child. Lily buried her face in her mother's shoulder and whispered, "I saw him. There. I didn't think I could do it, but I did." That night, once home, Lily opened the letter Evelyn had left. She read each line slowly. When she reached the part where her grandmother apologized for failing to protect her, her small shoulders began to shake. But then, Lily took out another sheet of paper and began to write, in scribbled, uneven lines. "I'm still afraid, but I think I want to forgive." That afternoon, at Sandy's house where Evelyn had been brought to rest, no one spoke for the first few hours. She sat in her familiar rocking chair, the light filtering through the curtains, casting a thick silence over her face. Ashley came in with 2 cups of hot tea. She sat down beside her, offering one. Evelyn gently set the cup on the table, eyes fixed on the window. She gathered her strength to break the silence between them. "Ashley," she began, her voice raspy but steady. "I know. It's not easy to forgive." Ashley turned to look at her mother, her eyes still conflicted. "But I'm truly sorry," Evelyn continued, this time slower, her voice cracking. "Not because everything came to light, but because I let it happen. I failed to protect Lily. And I wasn't honest with myself or with you all. That hurts me more than anything." Ashley stared into the steam rising from her cup. "I don't know what to say, Mum. Part of me is still so angry. But another part understands how terrified you must have been, and I can see you're already living with the consequences." The air was thick, as though everyone was afraid to break something fragile. Sandy, the strongest of the 3 women, sat down in the chair across from them. She placed her hand on her mother's and looked at Ashley. "You know," she said, "there are mistakes we can't erase. But how we live after them, that can be the clearest part in an otherwise grey life. Mum chose to go to court, to speak the truth. That's not something everyone can do." Evelyn wept. Not from guilt this time, but from release. Sandy embraced her, and Ashley, after a moment of hesitation, wrapped her arms around her too. In that moment, the fracture didn't vanish, but something had begun to mend. A week later, Evelyn stood outside the knitting club, her hand clutching the faded strap of her cloth bag. Inside were old balls of yarn, a few unfinished sweaters, and a piece of memory she had long tried to avoid. She took a deep breath, her left foot hesitant. Inside, she wrestled with doubt. Would her old friends still want her back? Would the stairs still hold judgment? But then, she thought of Lily, the little granddaughter who had dared to face her fear in a room full of strangers. Evelyn told herself, if Lily could do it, so could she. And so, she stepped in. When she opened the door, the room fell silent. No one smiled. No one looked away. Judy, the short woman with the sharp voice who was always blunt, stood up first. "Mrs. Evelyn," Judy began, her voice still firm, but now with a gentler edge. "I won't say I wasn't disappointed to learn you stayed silent all this time. But I can't deny it took tremendous courage to go to court and speak the truth." She paused, looking directly at Evelyn, then continued. "None of us is perfect. But maybe what matters most is what we choose to do after we've been wrong. And you chose the right thing." Judy stepped forward, handing Evelyn a skein of red yarn. "We don't need you to be perfect. We need a friend who can keep knitting with us." Joan, from the convent, was there too. She smiled, nodding softly. "Sometimes the best thing we can do is return to where we left off." Evelyn sat down slowly, the wooden chair creaking softly beneath her. She let out a long, deliberate breath, as though trying to release something far heavier than air. Her hands hovered above the yarn for a moment, fingers slightly unsteady, uncertain. They weren't trembling from age alone, but from the quiet weight of memory. She picked up the knitting needles, gently, almost reverently. The first stitch came hesitantly, her fingers fumbling as if relearning an old language. But she didn't stop. With each loop of yarn, each quiet pull through the fabric, something within her began to settle, Her breath found rhythm. Her spine straightened. Her hands, once unsure, now moved with quiet determination. It wasn't just a sweater taking shape beneath her fingers. It was a silent, stubborn kind of healing. Stitch by stitch, she wasn't just mending wool, but reweaving the frayed, fragile threads inside herself. The ones worn thin by regret, guilt, silence. The ones tied too tightly around words she never said, and the ones snapped clean from things she couldn't undo. And in that quiet corner of the room, surrounded by the soft ticking of the clock and the distant laughter of her family, Evelyn kept knitting. Not quickly, not perfectly, but steadily. As if, with every careful movement, she was telling herself, "You're still here, and it's not too late to make something whole again." That evening, Ashley and Lily sorted through old drawings in the living room. Among them was a sketch of the kitchen table, the one Lily had pointed out in court. "Do you want to keep this one?" Ashley asked. Lily nodded. "To remind me." I got through it. Ashley held her daughter tightly. No words were needed, because some battles aren't won with swords and shields, but by continuing to live, by not letting the past devour the future. And in that house, 3 generations, each bearing their own pain, were learning how to forgive. Not to erase, but to move forward. Together. Early in the morning, spring sunlight streamed through the glass window, casting warm golden streaks across the wooden floor. The kitchen in Ashley's house still carried the scent of freshly baked pastries. At the dining table, Lily sat in the middle, surrounded by laughter and the soft clinking of spoons against porcelain plates. "Your bike's in the backyard," Ashley said, pouring milk into Lily's glass. "If it doesn't rain this weekend, shall we go to the park, just the 2 of us?" Lily laughed. It had been a long time since her laughter had sounded so natural. "But you have to remember to wear your helmet. You fell last time, remember?" From the living room, Sandy called out, a cup of coffee in hand. "And don't race her. She's got longer legs than you do, Ashley." Laughter echoed around the room. Evelyn sat at the head of the table, once her husband's seat. Her hands moved slowly, knitting, and on her lap, a tiny sweater was gradually taking shape. Lily turned to her and whispered, "Grandma, can you sew me a pencil case?" Evelyn nodded, her smile gentle. "I'll make it twice as strong, so the precious things inside will never fall out." That afternoon, Ashley stepped into her room, carrying an old box filled with letters her mother had once written. She sat at the desk, opening each envelope one by one, reading slowly. Every line of handwriting felt like the old, steady breath of the past returning. In one envelope was the letter Evelyn had written after the trial, never read aloud. In it, she spoke of her own fears, of the mistakes that had silenced her. But at the end of the letter she wrote, "I believe you'll be a braver mother than I ever was. Rewrite your story from exactly where you stand." Ashley set the letter down, her eyes stinging. She picked up an empty notebook and began to write. "The first day after the wreckage. My mother, myself, and my daughter, we all survived, not perfectly, but whole and resilient." Ashley paused, leaning back in her chair. A part of her still trembled, afraid the past might come rushing back at any moment. But alongside that fear, there was courage. She hadn't run away. She had stayed beside her daughter when it mattered most. Forgiveness, she now understood, wasn't forgetting. It was choosing to live on without letting the pain make every decision. And she knew that forgiveness, like love, was a choice, made day by day. She turned to a fresh page. The next line came quietly, like a reminder to herself. "I forgive. Not just my mother, but myself, too." Evening came. 3 generations sat together on the porch. Evelyn stitched the final threads. Sandy sliced an apple into 6 neat pieces. Ashley swung her legs as she peeled an orange, watching Lily stretch out on the grass. The breeze stirred the trees, carrying the scent of young grass and the warmth of a gentle afternoon. Lily propped herself up, eyes on the horizon. Sunlight pierced the thin clouds, painting soft shafts of light across the blue-grey sky. She tilted her head, her eyes shining, and softly said, "Mum, the sky is beautiful today." Ashley turned to look at her daughter, then at her own mother, who was smiling, her face lighter than ever. And in that moment, no one said another word. Because they all knew, though the rain had fallen for a long time, the light had returned. The story had ended, but its echo would linger, in Lily's gaze, in Evelyn's quiet knitting, and in the unfinished lines of Ashley's journal. It wasn't just a journey of surviving hardship, but of learning how to forgive others and oneself. Have you ever carried a secret sorrow in your heart, something too heavy to speak of? Have you ever chosen silence over confrontation, simply because the pain felt too great? Share it with me, not to find an answer, but to be heard. Where are you listening to this story? If you're in a car, drive safely. Don't let your emotions carry you too far. If you're in bed, under a familiar blanket, I hope this story has felt like a small warmth for your soul.